When Meng Longtan and Zhu Xiaolonian, both from Jiangxi, were visiting the capital, they accidentally came to a temple called Lanrua. The temple buildings and monastic quarters were not very spacious, but there was only an old monk staying there. When guests arrive, he adjusts his robe and comes out to greet them, guiding them to offer donations. In the main hall stands a statue of Jigong, and the murals on both sides of the walls are exquisite, with lifelike figures. On the eastern wall, celestial maidens are depicted scattering flowers. Among them is a little girl with a hanging bun in her hair, holding a flower and smiling. Her rosy lips seem about to speak, and her eyes appear ready to come alive. Jeju stared for a long time, unable to help but feel his mind swaying, suddenly lost in thought. His body suddenly became light and airy, as if riding on clouds already on the wall. Seeing the many halls and pavilions, it was no longer a scene of the human world. A senior monk was giving a Dharma discourse on the altar, surrounded by a large crowd of people, and Zhu was among them. A short while later, it seemed as if someone was secretly tugging at his sleeve. When he turned around, he saw a little child with a hanging braid, smiling and walking away, his shoes following him, passing through the winding railings and entering a small room, but hesitating to approach. She turned around, waving the flower in her hand, making a gesture of waving from afar. He ran over to her. The room was silent and empty. She immediately embraced him, and he didn't really refuse. Thus the two grew close. After that, she closed the door and left, reminding him not to cough. At night, she came again. After 2 days, the female companions found him together, and they approached the scholar, jokingly saying to the woman, "The young man in your belly has grown up. Is he still as messy-haired as a girl?" Holding the hairpin and earrings together, they urged her to comb her hair. The woman, shy, could not utter a word. A girl said, "Sister, let's not stay too long, in case someone gets upset." Everyone laughed and left. The man looked at his daughter, her hair neatly tied up, with strands of hair by her temples hanging down like a phoenix's tail. She was even more beautifully radiant than when she was younger. Looking around and finding no one else, gradually entering an ambiguous situation. The fragrance intoxicates the mind, and joy is still in full swing. Suddenly, the sound of Jimo's boots was very loud, the chains clanking loudly. Then came the noise of a noisy argument. The woman hastily stood up, and together with Zhu, they secretly observed. They saw a messenger wearing golden armor, his face as black as lacquered, holding chains and a hammer, with many women surrounding him. The envoy said, "Are all prepared?" The response was, "Everything is fully prepared." The envoy said, "If there are still people hiding in the lower world, expose them all. Don't cause Yi any trouble." Everyone again unanimously said, "None." The envoy turned around and looked back, as if searching for someone hiding. The woman was very frightened, her face turning as pale as ashes. She hurriedly said to Zhu, "Hurry, hide under the bed." Then she opened the small door on the wall and suddenly ran away. Zhu Fu dared not rest even for a moment. Soon he heard the sound of boots entering the room and then leaving. Not long after, the noisy sounds gradually faded away, and his mind eased a bit. However, there were still voices coming and going outside the door. Zhu sat for a long time, feeling a buzzing sound in his ears and flashes of fire in his eyes. This state was almost unbearable, so he could only sit quietly, listening and waiting for the woman to return. He even forgot where he had come from.
When Meng Longtan was in the hall, he suddenly found Zhu gone. He suspected and asked the monk. The monk smiled and said, "He has gone to listen to the Dharma."
Cool! Where? Not far. After a while, he tapped the wall with his finger and shouted, "Zhu Tan Yue, why haven't you returned for so long?" Soon, he saw a red figure in the painting on the wall, standing with its ear tilted, as if listening carefully to something. The monk called out again. The companions for the outing have been waiting for a long time.
He floated down from the wall, his heart despondent, standing motionless, his eyes wide and his legs weak. Ming was greatly alarmed and asked him calmly,
Originally, he was lying on the bed, and when he heard the knocking sound as loud as thunder, he went out of the room to eavesdrop. Together, they looked at the person picking flowers. Her hair was piled high, no longer hanging down, as it did when she was a girl.
Ju knelt before the old monk and asked him the reason. The monk smiled and said, Illusions arise from life. How can I possibly explain them? Ju was speechless with anger, while Meng was shocked and lost in awe.
Get up immediately and walked out along the steps.
The commentator of the strange record says, Illusions arise from life. This statement seems to be spoken by a person of virtue.
If a person has the thought of lust, he will encounter situations of disrespect. If a person has the thought of disrespect, he will encounter situations of fear. The Bodhisattva enlightens ignorant and naive people. Various illusions arise simultaneously, all generated by the human mind itself. The wife was anxious inside, but she failed to hear her say the words of enlightenment before she ran into the mountains with her hair disheveled.